Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. New moves in the energy sector. The Department of the Interior announced two major steps on Friday to expand offshore oil and gas leasing. It's part of President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, seeking to boost domestic energy production while reducing reliance on foreign suppliers. The first lease sale is planned in the Gulf of America, with another proposed auction in Alaska's Cook Inlet. Joining us to unpack what all this means is Ray Trevino, Vice President of Operations at Pecos Country operating in Texas, and Bart Marcois, former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of Energy for Policy and International Affairs under the Bush administration. Thank you both so much for being here. Now, Ray, starting with you, the first sale will open roughly 80 million acres across the Gulf of America for oil drilling, with the BOEM setting the royalty rate at 12.5%, or the lowest permitted by statute. Talk to us about how big of a deal this is and how long it'll take to kick off something like this.
Well, thank you as always for having me, and just so excited. This 12.5% is, as President Trump would say, a huge deal. The last administration, it was more over, I believe, 20% was the amount that the government was taking out of it. So this 12.5% really motivates oil and gas companies, along with oil and gas investors, to get back behind a lot of proven production in places like the Gulf of America and in Alaska as well.
And Bart, this is part of the Trump administration's effort to unleash American energy dominance and cement the United States' position as a global energy powerhouse. How do you see these moves in the Gulf of America fitting in with this goal?
You can take out the word energy when you say global energy powerhouse. It makes us a global powerhouse. If we're dominant in energy, we're dominant in everything. We never would have had the Ukraine war. Putin would never have invaded Ukraine if Biden had not let the price of oil go up to over $80 a barrel and flirting with $100 a barrel, if I remember correctly, during part of that time. The best way to stop the war in Ukraine is to bring down the price of oil, and the best way to do that is to produce here in America. Ray, I take my hat off to you because you are a production guy. You're the guy out there drilling the wells and producing the oil. And I used to be a roustabout in Kern County, California, worked all over leases all over Kern County. That's how I put myself through college. And I have just tremendous respect for drillers and production guys all over the world. And I thank you for producing oil.
And Ray, certain environmentally sensitive zones will remain off limits, but talk to us about the regulation, environmental concerns that pop up around projects like these. How long would it take to kick off something like this?
Yes, I wish I could say that we could kick these off overnight and just begin to see revenue, but the crude truth is it's going to take us a little bit of time to ramp up, obviously get these leases done, get the due diligence completed as well, to then continue and to produce from these areas. And if I may, sir, thank you very much. That's high praise coming from you and your administration. So I just want to say thank you very much for the kind words. As far as regulation goes, what a great team we have right now leading the charge with Lee Zeldin, looking over the EPA, and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright, just working as a team to really remove the unnecessary red tape that was there in place during the last administration to make it more difficult to really create more energy security for the United States. And with these gentlemen now looking things over and seeing and understanding, more importantly, how business works in the energy sector and how important it is to the United States, we're really only going to continue to grow, especially in these prime exploration acreage areas of the Gulf of America and Alaska.
And Bart, expanding on your earlier point, talk to us about the geopolitical implications here. If, energy security is national security, how does all of this fit in?
Sure. We produce about 4 billion barrels a year, about 13 million barrels a day of oil currently, give or take. It fluctuates up and down. There are at least estimated 30 billion barrels of oil in the Gulf of America alone. That's not including natural gas, and it's about what's in Alaska. Cook Inlet, I love the name of it up there, the big, beautiful Cook Inlet lease. That's the official name of the lease they're offering up there. Not so much, but what that means is we cannot be held hostage by any oil producing cartel or nation. The Venezuelans can't hold us hostage. The Qataris, the Saudis are our allies now. They're not going to hold us hostage. But when it comes to money, everybody kind of looks at it. The Saudis have always been the swing producer. Well, we can outproduce the Saudis if we really develop these leases. That our production costs are higher, but we have a great deal of oil, and it's about time we tap into it. And if you think President Trump can sue for peace by threatening tariff measures and other economic measures. Imagine what he can do if he can threaten to withhold oil or promise to give oil at concessionary rates to nations that he's making peace deals with. It's an enormous bit of political and diplomatic leverage. There is no larger than other than outright military action.
And Ray, as Bart mentioned, it's not just the Gulf of America. The BOEM is also proposing to make about 1 million acres available for leasing in Alaska's Cook Inlet. Now, that also includes the 12.5% royalty rate. The sale is the first of 6, actually, required by the One Big Beautiful Bill. Now, there does seem to be more environmental concerns over this move. What do you expect the EPA under Lee Zeldin to do on this?
Well, I expect Lee Zeldin to run the EPA the way that it was designed to be run. We don't hear about the acid rain in the Northwest anymore or any of these other things. And that's because of the EPA in the 1970s and 80s when it did a great job protecting America and our environments and the people. And I expect it to continue to do the same. What we're excited about is that this administration and EPA have removed basically political red tape to allow America to have that energy security. So I do expect a lot of oil and gas companies, and the majority, I should say, to continue to run their companies with the environment first and safety first at the same time, because I don't know any oil and gas men or women that aren't conservative and conservationists at the same time. We all love Mother Earth, and we all are blessed to tap into the resources that it has, and we know that we need to respect it. So we only want to continue to do what's best, produce oil, and keep the area as clean as possible.
And staying with you very quickly, Ray, there does seem to be increasing focus on Alaska lately, including in terms of, say, minerals. Talk to us, though, about the resources in Alaska when it comes to the Cook Inlet.
Yes, Alaska alone is also another strong area for oil and gas, along with other natural resources. And keep in mind also of the location that Alaska is in on the globe and how important that is as well to the United States and the security of the United States. Prudhoe Bay up there has always, and the North Slope has always continued to produce great oil, and we expect it to continue to do so, adding on the Cook Inlet as well. So Alaska is also a very important hub for the energy sector and an important security measure for the United States.
And Bart, the BOEM says the offshore leases will help support high-paying jobs, coastal infrastructure, and state-level revenue sharing while bolstering federal finances. What are you anticipating critics to say about these projects?
Well, critics will say the same thing they've been saying for decades since Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, that they're going to claim that there will be massive environmental damage, and they'll pick some poster child of a species and say this species is going to suffer damage. But I want to talk about that, and I want to say something. I'm a Republican. I'm a partisan Republican, but I need to point out that it's not just the other party that are the bad guys on manipulating concern about the environment. The regulatory barriers are essentially a license for blackmail by the administration and members of Congress, and both parties are guilty of it. The whole reason there are environmental regulations that could not be undone by either administration is there are members of Congress that don't want them to go away. And it's not the earth they care about. What they care about is that if there's somebody like Ray that wants to drill and needs a permit and the permit isn't being issued, Ray's got to call his congressman or his senator and say, hey, can you do something about this? And the senator will say, absolutely. I will pick up the phone and I will call those SOBs over at Bureau of Land Management or Army Corps of Engineers, and I will hustle that permit along. Well, there are 147 steps for a permit to be issued in some cases, and that's 147 phone calls that the congressman has to make, and that's 147 times that the congressman can send Ray and his buddies an invitation to a fundraiser and let him know that, boy, it sure would be good to see you again. That's what is driving the regulatory burden. It's members of Congress who don't want it to go away because it gives them the power of incumbency, the power to raise money, the power to extort money from their constituents who are just trying to create jobs and do business and do things that are good for the country. And and people need to stop being emotionally blackmailed, the voters, by threats that are really meant to increase the power of members of Congress to extort the business community.
And on that note, Ray, there is a lot of focus on the cost of living right now. Talk to us, though, about the impact these new projects might have on domestic energy prices. Could we see those come down?
This day and age, anything is possible. I know President Trump just last week touted he'd love to get gasoline prices back down to $2. As we continue to produce oil from the Gulf of America, we will see that needle continue to move. I would think that we would see prices go down. When it actually comes to America and watching the price of oil globally change, nothing moves the needle more than the Gulf of America. That right there is one of our best areas of production. Of course, here in Texas, we do have West Texas that produces about 6 million barrels of oil a day itself. However, we also know that, hey, the Gulf of America is still the number one spot that we continue to produce from. So, yes, we could definitely see some ways of the oil prices continuing to get lower. And as Bart mentioned earlier, that we will not be at the mercy of people like OPEC or these other countries that don't like us. Keep in mind when the when the Iran issues happened in the 1970s, OPEC alone had an estimated 50% of the access global oil. Today, that is down to less than 10%. That is because of the hardworking men and women in America that produce 14 million barrels of oil a day that we now really continue to help better control the price and give us more, not only energy security, but more importantly, national security.
That's a great transition because, Bart, I want to go to your earlier point about the U.S. being a global powerhouse. How do you see communist China watching all of these moves and what this means for the U.S.-China rivalry, if you will?
China is an enormous consumer of oil. I don't think they're the biggest. I think they're the second biggest. I don't remember. But they are enormous consumers of oil, and they're watching this very carefully. They have been going around the world for nearly 30 years trying to lock up the production of critical resources, critical minerals. We know they have a monopoly on rare earth minerals, or a near monopoly. They have been trying to lock up energy resources. They have been far less successful. The people in the GCC have staved off Chinese interference. I wrote about it 20 years ago. I spoke with some high-ranking officials from some GCC countries. Said China's knocking at our door every day. If we wanted to retire and get rich, we could give a lease to China, and they would support us for the rest of our lives. But we want to keep them out of the Gulf. They would give anything to have leverage over the world economy like America is going to have. America is a benign power. We're not going to use it to oppress people. We're going to use it to force open markets and force open opportunities for people to trade with one another. and opportunities for American companies. That's a big difference between us and China.
Well, Bart Marcotte, Ray Trevino, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.